The penultimate round of the season is upon us as prime time shines here at Cheshire's Oulton Park. Hello everyone and welcome to RaceSpotTV. My name is William Chadwick, thrilled to be joined again by Cameron Roger in the booth. We've got Iku Marikala behind the scenes. It's great to have you back, Cameron. A lot has changed since the last time you joined us at Spa at round one of the season. How have you enjoyed the Clio Cup action this season?
Oh, it's been great. It's been an awesome addition, first of all, to iRacing with a new car coming in at the back end of last year. And it's certainly been a great introduction. And it's obviously a slightly different format to what we've had over prime time over the last 6 months or so. So, yeah, I think it's been a great addition. And just 2 weeks left to go of this season.
2 weeks left to go, and we're here at Cheshire's Oulton Park, the best circuit in the world. And no one can tell me different. Very, very traditional circuit, always hosts the opening round of the British GC season here in the UK, and a fantastic place for these Clio Cups to go racing. As we said, it's the penultimate round of the season here at Oulton Park. Next week, me, Cameron, even Iku won't be here for the final round, so this is the last round you'll have of us guys. Potentially, we don't know what might happen, but it's been a really good season so far. If we look at the points, we will see that there's been a little bit of changing here. We've seen Alex Roger, who we've seen a lot throughout the season, appear in a lot of our races. He's moved up to third. Still Danny Martin and Adi Cobri-Lopez incredibly close at the top, and it'll be really interesting to see whether one of them two can leapfrog each other going into the final week. But looking forward, drivers just partaking in qualifying at the moment. 4 minutes left to go. Rogers has set the benchmark lap as it is at the moment with a 1 minute 51.4. Going to be interesting to see some of the new drivers that have turned up tonight and what times they can do, Cameron.
Yeah, it's a tricky circuit, this as well. So I wonder if that's going to add some little differences here and there to what we see. A bit, of course, slower lap times than you see on some of the fast cars we've had around here. We've seen some great races on prime time with the R04, but yes, 1 minute 51.2 at the moment for Garcia up the top. Rogers in behind, a tenth and a half off, but already a little bit of a jump back with Mograni there in third place. Almost 3/4 of a second, getting close to 1 second behind.
Yeah, like you say, you'd expect those two drivers, very high caliber drivers, both around 5,000-6,000 iRating. iRacing's kind of ELO system like you get in many, many multiplayer games. So we expect those to be at the top, but nice and close between those two. A little bit further back, but we've still a little bit further back. There is a bit more of a gap, but we still got a close battle here as you're watching Anfield try and set his first lap. Oulton Park is a track on iRacing which is known for its kind of strict off tracks, especially at the exit of turn 1 and turn number 3. What's your experience of driving around here, Cameron, whenever you've managed to hop on the sim? Do you find it a track you enjoy, or do you loathe the off-track system?
In terms of the layout, yeah, it's a great layout. So fast, so flowing. All of the undulations as well. It's a very old school narrow circuit, but as you say, the off tracks can bite you. So that's just where you need to have that little bit of a couple of percent extra skill and keep it within the limits. But as ever, it can be a bit frustrating, but you have to not let it frustrate you, and then not let that frustration boil over, and then you start driving worse. So it does take that little bit of extra precision, and sometimes that actually makes a bit of a better race when you can't just go all over the grass and take the mick a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a challenge that our drivers will be looking to try and conquer here today, as we're looking at a few more of those times come through, as drivers are likely to be completing the final of their 2 designated laps in this short 8-minute qualifying session. Chapman has gone up there, the number 5 car, and has kind of bridged that gap between our top 2 and the guys falling back towards the top 5. Antonio Blancas is here. I swear he normally runs a Luigi livery, but he's won the Mario one. Maybe I've just got my head confused, but we've seen Blancas a lot through this series. Usually doesn't set a qualifying time, but as he comes towards the line here, it'll be interesting to see what time he puts on the board. Don't think he set one there, so maybe just getting a little bit of practice in, or potentially getting one of those pesky off tracks.
Yeah, maybe that is the case. I do love that livery, though. Certainly a very nice, different one. We sometimes see, replicas of, more real-life motorsport liveries, but it's always nice when you see one of the more fun, cartoony liveries showing obviously his love for the Mario games.
Well, it was often quite good because he ended up coming with, I assume, his friend. I forget the name, but they had both reasonably similar names, and they were in Mario and Luigi, and they always started at the back, and it was really interesting to see them chasing through the field. So it's very good to have Blanca's back in his Mario livery, and it's important to see the kind of expression of creativity and funness, which we love to see on these types of races, of course, using the training paint system. So with 30 seconds left to go in qualifying, that looks to be your order that you're seeing on the left-hand side, with Garcia and Rogers quite close at the top, and then a little bit of a gap down to the back, sort of 7 places, but they are very, very close, Cam. So very easy to do. But I'm sure that we'll have a good race.
Yeah, certainly. And yeah, a little bit of a slightly spread out field in terms of the speed at the back. But as you say, over the course of the race, is going to be very, very close in that midfield. And we're going to see loads of battles. And as ever, Garcia and Rogers at the top, just 2 tenths separating them in qualifying. That is going to be a really nice battle, and hopefully some good side-by-side action, but no hitting of the tyre barriers, please.
Yeah, well, as the session ticks over, we get to look towards your grid for 15 minutes of racing action here at Cheshire's Oulton Park. As we are expecting to see a very, very good race, I'm hoping that we see some really, really good close racing action. And as you see the grid on your screen, like we saw before, Roque Garcia manages to take pole position with a 51.1, a 1 minute 51.1, with Rogers behind him on the first row. Chapman, then Mokrani on the second row, and on the third row we got Tijuar coming back from last week, and Bones. Moving down to the 4th row of the grid, we've got Wrigley, followed by Anfield, then Bright, Moore, Bugani, and then Jones, finding out the top 6 rows. And then just 3 more cars left on your grid for this evening's race. A nice, close, compact field. Farshua, sorry, complaints in my DMs, please. Blancas and LeBlanc on the back row of the grid. It's going to be a fantastic race, Cameron. And as that timer ticks down to the start of our race, what are your predictions that you have going into this one?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a really close battle with the top 2. Might start to pull away a little bit, but as ever, when you start battling, you bring in the cars behind you as drivers are just gridding up now. And I definitely think we're going to see, that battle continue throughout. Hopefully they don't push each other off. But as ever, we're going to see those battles in the midfield, and they're going to be getting very close indeed. So hopefully we get a nice race as we come to green.
So the drivers ready to go racing here for 15 minutes of racing action at Oulton Park. The lights go off and we're underway here. Garcia gets a defensive line, pushes Rogers to the wall. Rogers keeps him inside here, going down into turn number 1. It's going to be side by side as your leaders battle down into Cascades. It looks to be fairly uniform further back and no big crashes so far.
Well, as Mokrani also trying to make some moves up there into that 4th. Oh, look, Chapman down the inside for 2nd place. Contact made as we're getting one of the M&M cars going off the side as we're getting Mokrani also getting the run up towards the island bend. It's so close between these drivers. Who's going to back out?
Yeah, it's very, very close, like you say. That was certainly a dive from Chapman up the inside to Rogers, but perhaps he was just being a bit cautious on the brakes as they come into Shell Oils for the first time. It was Wrigley and Farshu who had gone off in the background as we watch another car. I think that's LeBlanc, who's had a bit of a slide. Very easy to have a little bit of contact. Of course, there's not much weight over the rear of these cars, so any form of contact to the rear of these Clio Cups can cause quite a stir for them. But relatively dramatic opening few corners. It seems to settle down here, and a sizable lead for Garcia of 5 tenths going into the second of the Hislop chicanes.
As Mokrani then, Chapman going side by side. Who's going to come out on top? It looks like Mokrani's going to get up into that 3rd place. A gap is forming to the top 2. And with all this battling, as we were mentioning earlier, when you start to battle, everyone behind closes up. So we've got a huge train in this midfield, which is what we like to see. As LeBlanc in the background also making up a position for 11th place. But this is where it gets tricky because you're blinded side by side. As we come up the hill, that is going to be very, very fast into this right-handed corner of Druids. And it looks like they'll be LeBlanc there keeping that position. That was very brave.
Yeah, certainly a good bit of racing there, and Oulton Park never known for its very easy overtaking opportunities, but as we come into the final corner here, looks like Blancas has got to the inside, making quite a few positions on this opening lap. I believe that's up 9 positions, 6 positions actually, I must say, on the opening lap. So a fantastic start for Antonio Blancas here from the back of the grid, and this mid-pack, like we were talking about, has certainly been a really good race so far.
It has. I think that's going to continue because, as you say, with the way that these cars race, it seems to be quite difficult to get the perfect exits out of all the corners. And then, as ever, that gives you a bit of a run. Oh, as that is one of the cars says Makarani there, go way off. Can he keep it in check? I think he just about can. Coming down this straight, manages to come on. That's very aggressive there, coming back on. Almost too aggressive, some would say, but he's dropped down to that 7th place, just going too wide at that all-important Cascades corner, as we were mentioning with the track limits. By that time, the physical limits are almost putting him off into the fence.
Well, an old school British circuit always bites back. It was certainly a bit of a moment there for Makrani, and one of our fastest drivers in qualifying, one of those drivers kind of bridging the gap between our top 2 and the rest of the top 8. Has made a little bit of a mistake there, so it'd be interesting to see if he can fight back through with the remaining 12 minutes here in this race. Of course, short and sharp action. We're expecting maybe 9 laps, potentially 8 in this race, and as we watch the drivers battling down into his lots again, Makrani will certainly be looking to take advantage into Nicker Brook down the inside, the Braun livery car, and there's a bit of contact. Blancas is going to get caught up in it. He's gone onto the grass, planting the throttle to try and keep it straight, but that was certainly quite a lot of carnage there going through Nicker Brook.
We are 4 wide for a moment there, including cars all on the grass. Absolutely amazing scenes. Come up to Drewers once again, side by side. Blanca's there on the inside. He's going to be able to hold on to that. Blanc in the background, trying to actually get the run now as we come down towards basically the final corner into Lodge Corner. It's going to be side by side. Who is going to be later on the brakes? As it looks like Blanc's going to be coming through as well. Bright is going to be pushed out there. Blanc now up the inside, almost double overtake there as Blancas gets pushed out, coming up the hill once again.
Well, the Cars Racing livery with the Rusty sponsorship there, performing quite a touring car move, but these are little baby touring cars, so we'll maybe allow it. I don't know, potentially a little bit too aggressive, but a move therefore by Blancas, well, for LeBlanc, and Blancas has been pushed back a little bit further now, so that's unfortunate for him. More action down into Cascades. Turn number 3, the M&M car of Wrigley has gone wide again. Of course, having that moment on the first lap and catching the grass under braking, and it's so easy to have a moment there, and that's, yeah, unfortunate for him.
The only good thing about that is that obviously he's a front-wheel drive car, so it's a little bit easier to save slides like that. As Blancas has some more contact, goes off there, and coming in towards Shellos, is he going to be? No, he's going to back out that one, escape from the race. Fair play from that one. It looks like towing back to the pit lane, as we're seeing obviously all the drivers jump up because Blancas dropping it down at the field there, and just a bit of a shame there for Wrigley and Blancas for 2 drivers in a couple of corners really dropping out of this race. But this midfield pack is certainly actually staying quite close, but they are quickly dropping off the front with how much battling they're doing.
Yeah, and it looks to be maybe a slight slowdown penalty here for one of your drivers. I believe that to be Anfield, so potentially getting that through the chicanes, very possible to do, and unfortunate for Blancas because we saw him have such a good start, up 6 positions at one point, and really was the innocent party in a lot of those incidents. And sometimes that stuff can just happen in racing, and you've just got to pick yourself up and move on. But as we come into Druids for the 3rd time here, we still see a lot of cars close together, and certainly not the end of any of these battling, even if the gap at the front is opening up quite a lot.
And I definitely think these drivers are not going to finish in these positions, or at least they're going to try not, at least. Yeah, coming down towards Lodge for another time. And that's a little bit wide there. Anfield is going to get the run, actually, as we come up through Dearly, but up towards the first corner once again, side by side, although it's a bit of a left-handed kink, so this is the long way round, as also again, Bright trying to get involved, trying to make a 3 wide in towards the first corner, the Old Hall corner. Oh, and that is Bright making some contact as Rusty's car is going to be spinning around. They're pushing each other, and they're going to both end in the fence.
Yeah, and there might have been a bit of air contact between the 2 drivers there, but certainly another chaotic situation exiting turn number 1, and for Anfield and LeBlanc, that's not how you'd want it to end, and unfortunately just one of those incidents where they kind of get in contact with each other, end up pinging between each other, and nothing's intentional, but just a clumsy accident, and unfortunate for both those drivers dropping down the order.
Yeah, it seems to be a way with this car. We've seen a couple of times already this race when you start getting a bit loose with that rear end and the car starts wiggling all over the place. Yeah, it's very difficult to get it back in check, and as you see, you start ping-ponging off other cars, which is not ideal in terms of having a nice, clean race, which is a bit of a shame, but the battle does continue, as I think we're going to try and see a replay of how some of this action happened.
Yeah, so we're watching Blanca's car here, the Mario car that we've seen so much. This was on the outside, so you watch it, that door-to-door contact, you couldn't really pin it. on one driver and the other, it's pretty much a racing incident, I would suggest. But it's just one of those things. Going side by side through Island Bend, the car on the inside, especially being front-wheel drive, is always going to wash out, and the car on the outside obviously needs to take a bit of a tighter line to maintain a lot of speed to try and get up the inside into Shell Oils. And unfortunately, that door-to-door contact there just saw Blancas sent off into the gravel. An unfortunate way for him to end his race.
Yeah, I think it was Baganti that we were seeing now. He was the car on that inside. He definitely came off the apex a little bit, but as you say, such a difficult corner. He was definitely trying to give the room, but yeah, it's never easy. These are not the most capable cars in the world as ever. As we've seen along the front straight, Bright once again trying to make a move. He had a bit of contact into the first corner last time around into Oulton. Makes the move nice and cleanly though this time. Does run not a little bit wide actually. Keeps it in the track limits, and that is done for P8.
Yeah, very nice move there for Bright, like you say. Did look like he was going to run wide. Certainly carried a lot more speed than Jones into that Old Hall corner. But yeah, it was a good move, and that's going to help him potentially start to attack more into the later stages of this race. But time flies, Cameron. We're already halfway through, on to lap number 5 of 9. Well, potentially 9. It's very, very close between being 8 or 9. But and we've seen so much action already.
We certainly have, but not quite for the front two. They seem to have been status quo for quite a while, but they do have a big 6-second gap behind, as you see the other drivers there coming down the hilltop in towards Hislop. So it looks like Garcia is going to be holding on to this quite nicely. Rogers needs to close up that gap, and actually running just the tiniest bit wide. They've got to be careful, of course, not to get a wheel into the actual grass bit there, otherwise it's pulling you wide. So they're definitely pushing the limits. Just it's a bit of a time trial between these two drivers at the moment.
It always ends up being kind of a time trial competition when you're racing against a driver that's so equally matched to yourself. We saw how close they were in qualifying, how close they've been in the race. You know, do not take anything away from these two drivers. Opening up such a gap to the cars behind, despite the carnage, is a massive show of their talent here today. But last time around, like you say, Rogers was a bit quicker, 0.3 of a second, in fact, over Garcia, but it looks to have equalled out this time by. Certainly interesting to see how that gap can develop over the final few laps of this race. Don't think there's any tyre shenanigans or anything like this coming into play in terms of trying to keep them in a good check and in a nice, cool state where you're getting maximum grip, but certainly there could be a little bit of that that's maybe contributing to this gap closing just slightly over the last couple of laps.
And also the pressure, I guess you'd say, comes into it a little bit. It doesn't matter what level of racing you're doing. You're always going to be looking in that mirror. You're going to be making the tiniest mistakes when you start feeling the tension of that driver behind you. And they're definitely closing up a little bit on screen at least. But the gap seems to be staying somewhat stable. So Rogers is definitely trying. It's just, you know, when you're at the front like Garcia, as long as he makes every braking zone and every apex, he should be able to hold on to it. It's if he lets that pressure come and the mistakes come into it, then that's when he'll start falling back.
Well, certainly as a racing driver, you always want to be looking ahead, never look behind. My dad always used to nag me when we did karting, don't look behind, Will. You don't need to, as we watch a replay of the Rusty's car. Hopefully we see this. Yeah, this was just where he went wide, got that bad run down into turn number 1. I believe this is where we saw that contact at Old Hall Corner, where we saw that little bit of racing or ping pong action, as one Sebastian Vettel once quoted. And like you say, Blanc gets wide in, and as you can see, it's I believe it was Bright that made that contact, and it's really unfortunate. I wouldn't ever put that on either of the drivers personally, Cameron. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it looks like Bright maybe somehow made contact with both of them. I don't know. That was a bit of a weird one, actually, with how Blanc ended up getting spun around. But yeah, as you say, when you get 3 cars trying to all go for the same bit of track, that does happen. It's just a shame for, yeah, when they start wiggling like that and start hitting each other. As you say, there's so little weight on the rear end. It basically pivots around the steering column effectively. So yeah, it definitely adds a bit of a pendulum effect, because you have to think you've basically got all this bit of weight penduluming around the front axle, so it sticks out quite far, and yeah, a lot of movement, and yeah, hopefully we don't see too much more of that, but battles continue.
Yes, and like you say, battles do continue as we see I believe Wrigley, who we saw going off a couple times, but certainly seems to have a decent amount of pace in this race, and he's now coming to try and make it into the 9th position here as he attempts to attack Jones. I'm going to be interested to see what happens here in terms of coming through Cascades. Cascades is always one of those corners where you really need to get into that inside groove. There's a lot of time that can be gained by getting into the camber. But as we come up to Island Bend, certainly a long way alongside Wrigley looks to be. And going around the outside, no contact between these drivers into Shell Oils. Jones covers it well. It's a nice defensive line. Wrigley's going to have to try again somewhere else. Potentially now, if you're the driver in my head, you're thinking exit of the chicane, exit of the chicane. You've got to get that exit down through Britain's, down into Hislops and try and make a move down the inside. So as we go into the first chicane of the Oulton Park lap, doesn't look to be a good enough run to me to make anything happen down into the second chicane.
Yeah, it's always a tricky one, this, because this straight between the two chicanes is actually not the longest straight on the circuit because of the obviously the chains being added into that. It's actually that run out of Cascades, as you were saying, and because of that, that also makes it even more of an important corner to get that run up towards the Island Bend in towards Shell Oils, as we saw in the previous straight a few seconds ago. So that's potentially the place that Wrigley needs to have a look. They're only going to have is that maybe one more lap to go when they get towards the line as well. So definitely last chance saloon coming the way of some of these drivers.
I would like to bet it'll go one more, but it was certainly extremely close at the line. Must have been 152 for our leaders. So potentially, you know, if you're Wrigley, you're like, please, another lap, don't be white flag. But you know, if you're Jones, it's completely the other way around. It always goes for you and against you, but Jones will certainly be looking to try and maintain this position. I didn't see Barney, the flagman, waving the white flag there, so I would presume that we are going to get 2 more racing laps here. So it's all down to Wrigley to generate another passing opportunity in the remaining couple of laps here as we look to end off week 11 of Friday Night Prime Time.
Wrigley's certainly getting a bit of a run there through the mid part of that corner. Once again, gets the better exit and down this straight, left or right. Is he going to go? Goes to the inside this time. No, switches back to the outside, being perfectly blocked off there by the number 14 Machino Jones, who managed to hold on to it. Wrigley just couldn't seem to find the space on the track. Coming in towards Shell Oils, though, is going to be getting close. And as you say, I think we are getting one more lap. So Wrigley certainly learned that he's probably quicker in Cascades. Just needs to find the line coming off the corner.
Absolutely, that would be a very good conclusion that you've come to there, and I would certainly agree with it. And it looks like Jones doesn't really have the pace over Wrigley, but he certainly is defending his position well. Not the widest circuit in the world is Oulton Park, and there's many British GT drivers that have complained across that over the years, or British touring cars. The likes continue onwards, but like we're looking at here, it's going to be interesting to see whether Wrigley can generate that pass. Of course, Jones clearly knows that he's vulnerable off Cascades. Wrigley clearly knows that he's fast off Cascades. So it's going to be interesting to see the small little mind games as we see. I think that's Baganti in the background caught the grass and potentially even made the barrier.
That was a huge snap there. That was, yeah. I wasn't expecting the car to veer off to the right that much, but certainly did. And yeah, Michaela there just dropping down one place, but that certainly could have ended a lot worse.
Yeah, so very good to keep it out of the barrier, and certainly counting his lucky stars as he will enter his final lap of the race here. We watch a replay as we're coming through his lots into Knickerbrook, the right-hander. Expect to see a wheel dipped on the grass, and as you see, the smallest amount. We're talking a couple of pixels realistically, and it actually does meet the tyre barrier, but thankfully not a hard wall, so relatively little damage.
And it is final lap time. Garcia at the front has actually managed to get about 0.8 of a second since we last saw him. Just doing a pretty good job holding it out the front, and just has pretty much half a lap to go now. Absolutely solid drive. No real questions, I think, that he was going to win this race.
Yeah, well, we're watching it. Well, we won't curse him yet. You know, it's definitely possible as a RaceSpotTV commentator to dispel your curse upon drivers. It's certainly been done before, as we're seeing Wrigley look to the outside. A little bit of contact between him and Jones. Not sure how that one was set up, but it was certainly close off the exit. But it looks like Jones is going to keep that position at the end of it.
Yeah, Jones has done a great defence there, and that just shows you how the mid-pack always gives some nice battles, even if we don't have battles for the lead per se. But yeah, certainly it's actually been quite a nice little race here around Oulton Park. I was expecting some action. We definitely got it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Roque Garcia, they say pressure makes diamonds. Garcia has definitely shined bright like a diamond here in week 11 of Friday night primetime. And he comes to take the checkered flag at Oulton Park for week 11. A fantastic win by just over 1 second, a controlling display. Congratulations to Roque Garcia, who did a very, very good job holding off Alex Rogers, who came in second. We expect to see Chapman across the line to get that third place in the Rusty's car. And a few more coming through. Tishalar, Mock-Rain, Bones, Moore, all look to be coming in the order that we expected them. And that battle between Jones and Wrigley that we followed so closely over the final few laps, Jones has managed to hold him off to secure that 9th position. Fantastic race we've seen here tonight, Cameron.
Yeah, that's a great battle as well. Jones just shows you, even if you don't quite have the speed, because I do think Wrigley was a little bit faster, you can still hold on if you put the cars in the right positions. And definitely coming out of Cascades, those few laps that we saw, managed to put his car in the right place, block off Wrigley there from getting past. So yeah, nice battles. And after the first couple of laps, there was some nice clean racing too.
Yeah, we certainly saw a little bit carnage early on, but some very clean racing towards the end. And here are your results for week 11 of Friday night primetime. Roque Garcia takes the win by 1.1 seconds over Alex Rogers. Very, very close, mental, pressure-filled battle across the course of the race, and certainly enjoyed watching our drivers take on Oulton Park here today. Chapman, Tikalar, Mock-Rain, Bones, Moore, Bright, Jones and Wrigley round out your top 10. We saw a good amount of battling throughout. And as we look to your final 5, it's Anfield, Bagani, LeBlanc, Fershau and Blancas on foot. Very, very unlucky throughout the course of the race, not even finishing in the end. But that is your drivers and your finishing order. And that will be it for week number 11 of Friday Night Primetime. What are your closing thoughts here, Cameron? It was great to have you back as we head to Summit Point next week.
Yeah, I think this race just proves how this car's a great addition to iRacing, and that will continue, of course, into next week. Definitely a tricky, even in some ways more a tricky circuit than we've seen today as well. So hopefully that's going to be a really nice way to end off the season, and then we'll see, of course, what gets voted for the next season to be shown on primetime. So yeah, definitely, it was good to be back in the booth for primetime, and can't wait to see what happens next week.
Well, it's been a fantastic week 11 here on RaceSpotTV for the Friday Night Primetime Clio Cup Series. 1 week is left to go. Who will clinch the iRacing Championship, and will we see some more names back to the top of the times? It's been fantastic joining you here with Cameron Roger and EQ Mericala behind the scenes. And as always, until next week, goodbye.